Hello, my name is Kazim Abdullah, and I'm here with the Castalian String Quartet. And the Castalian String Quartet consists of Sini Simonen, Daniel Roberts on violins, Ruth Gibson on the viola, and then Christopher Graves on the cello. And they just recorded this afternoon a lovely program of music by Mozart, Fanny Hensel, and Franz Schubert. And they are actually on their first stop of a tour, of a very extensive tour of the United States, and their first stop is here at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I was so impressed for such a long program to both rehearse and then record. And yeah, you just arrived yesterday, so it's really impressive that you play already with such vigor. So I'm sure all the other people that are going to hear the various performances of the programs that you're doing will be very as impressed as I was with your performance. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the name and the origins of the quartet, and especially the sort of Hermann Hesse relationship from the name.
Well, I'll give a bit of background info on the quartet starting. The quartet was formed in 2011 by musicians all based in London, and as with a lot of quartets, there have been various membership changes and evolution along the way, and yeah, I've known Chris the longest. We met at the Royal College of Music, where I was just beginning my postgraduate, and Chris was ending his undergraduate. And then we studied as a quartet in Hanover, in Germany, in a string quartet master's course. And there we met Sini, who was also studying in Hanover. And then I just realized that I lied at the beginning and that I've actually known Ruth the longest. Even because we studied together in Manchester, Royal Northern College of Music, although Ruth is the newest member of the quartet.
And I guess the name, there's two connections, really. One is to ancient Greek mythology, where there's a Castalian spring in Delphi, from the ancient times, and it's a sort of mythological place where artists and poets and musicians came to drink and sort of to receive an inspiration from the nymphs. But then also, actually, yes, Hesse is one of my favorite writers, also Chris, I think. And so in the glass bead game, the Kingdom of Castalia, it's a place where this game is played, which kind of integrates all of art, science, philosophy, thinking into a kind of grand, mesmerizing, sort of fragmented, but sort of total art. And I mean, in that book, it's not a completely positive place, because it's a sort of ivory tower, and sort of, there's a contradiction to being separated from society as well, and I think it explores the themes of humanity and delving into something deeply and life.
It would be wonderful if we'd thought through all this as we chose the name. But we found more connotations to the name after deciding that Castalian wasn't taken, and we thought it sounded pretty good. This is back in the day. It's funny how these things happen.
It's true. Well, it's a great name, and I was just curious if, like, sort of those ideals, or the idea behind the name, does that sort of influence your programming at all? Really, do you think?
I don't think it ever has it?
No.
Have we ever
Well, I guess we are all interested in we are all interested in life in a broad way, which I think the name kind of refers to. But
yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's a kind of poetic name, but I don't think it's had a kind of direct. I mean, it would be great to do a festival in Delphi.
Good excuse. We must do it. Also, the name is always autocorrected, often to Castilian on emails and stuff. So everybody thinks we're Spanish, but in fact.
Oh, we get many excited Spaniards coming up to us and saying, "What's the relationship with fans?" Sorry.
Okay, wonderful. Well, so I read that. I wanted to know about your residency at Oxford, and I'm curious. Do you have duties beyond the concerts that you do there? And I'm curious as well, I mean, do you have any plans to explore specific repertoire or projects that are arising from this particular residency?
Yeah, I mean, we've only just got started in Oxford, so I think it's very much kind of evolving.
Evolving.
We actually had a visit just last week, but we missed one in January due to COVID. Daniel had COVID, sadly. But yeah, I think we're there for 3 years, and we really want to mix with all the departments and do quite a lot of outreach and play as much as we can with the students, give tuition. And actually, our hope is that our repertoire can actually be built into the semester. And we're doing a Britten series to come and a Beethoven and Bartók series, so we're hoping to maybe do some repertoire with them and really just engage not just with the students but the audience, as much interaction as possible. Yeah.
On our last visit, we worked intensively with the composers, with some of the composers.
With some of the student composers.
With some of the student composers, which was quite an experience, that they all presented us with substantial works that we had to delve into, and then we just had an agonizingly short amount of time with each of them to explore ideas, and then we recorded their works, and there's 6 more works to come on our next visit. So that's,
yeah, but I think the idea is very much not just to do a concert. I mean,
Yes.
of course, the main thing is always the concert and that kind of thing, but actually we want to kind of try and integrate ourselves a little bit, become part of the town and the university, and get to know people, hopefully build up a bit of an audience. So, but also some, make friends and make contacts.
Yeah, it seems like a great chance to also sort of reach a younger generation and hopefully inspire them to know about chamber music and string quartets and things like this.
Yeah, and going into schools is one of the things that we, part of our vision is to play in primary schools and prisons as well, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just to go to places where music isn't necessarily a major part of life and bring it.
We're also trying to play in different venues in Oxford rather than just the traditional. And there's the Holywell Music Room, which is the oldest purpose-built music venue, classical music venue in the country. And so we gave our first performance there, but last time we played at the Mathematical Institute. And then we had a much younger audience, completely different audience, which was part of our idea. So it's really exciting.
I mean, I think I find exciting is just I sort of feel like I'm buzzing a little bit, sort of encountering all kinds of minds, all kinds of interesting people. We did we were part of a seminar on musicologist Hans Keller's work, and just sort of hear and be a little bit a part of the discussion is sort of just. I mean, it's wonderful when you have encounters with these fascinating minds.
We were saying we've never done anything particularly Castalian, but that is a bit
Very
after.
Castalian.
That's true. Well, wonderful. Well, I wanted to kind of delve in a little bit into the program, and in doing research on the quartet and on your history, I saw that you recorded Haydn's Opus 76. And of course, like Mozart's D minor Crucial 421 is very idiosyncratic, and I would say a quite powerful piece. And I'm curious, do you approach Haydn's quartets and Mozart's quartets differently?
I think they require a different approach. I don't think we probably think about it. I don't know. I certainly don't think, and we don't discuss really, this is Haydn, this is Mozart. But they feel entirely different to play for me. Of course, one can feed into the other, and it's having played all the Opus 76s, the extraordinary conversation. Sometimes it's such a clear conversation that Haydn's having. And for example, in this D minor quartet, a lot of the conversation feels, to me, a lot more veiled. And calls the Mozart, sorry.
Clarify.
Yes, no, absolutely. In the Mozart, compared to the D minor quartet in the Opus 76s as well, the Mozart is much more veiled and calls all kinds of colors that I think are entirely different to the ones that we would create in Haydn. Even though, of course, he's a Mozart's Haydn quartets. He's not just saying, oh master. He's saying, I'm so inspired by you. This is what I feel.
I mean, it's really unusual work. I think it's the most, the string quartet that's the most full of pathos than any string quartet that's written before it. It's dramatic, but in a very psychological, subtle way often. It's just, it's one of those pieces where I kind of go, well, there's nothing quite like this.
Yeah, it's very unique as far as its variety, I think, too. Yeah, like you were saying, look, of course, they're called the Haydn quartets, but he kind of takes it even further, I would say. What the quartet can express.
Yeah, I always find that with Haydn, it's about the conversation between us. He has a way of writing that each part feels incredibly organic, and the conversation is what the music is. It's about us conversing. But with Mozart, it's always way beyond yourself, because it's operatic. You have to be every character, and not necessarily the most organic, but the extremes of life. So I think they're very different demands on the musicality. That's what I find is a big difference, yeah.
Right. So going on to the Fanny Hensel, and it's funny, I deliberately didn't want to listen to a recording of it just because I was like, well, this will be a piece I will have never heard before. And I'm always like, I'm glad I discovered it today in your performance. I'm glad, and it's made me curious to know more of Fanny Hensel's music, because, of course, one knows of her as being Felix Mendelssohn's sister, and that she was a composer too. But I honestly had never really delved into her music, and I'm inspired now to do so after hearing you play it. And so obviously, her music is starting to get more performances and recognition. And I'm curious, what drew you to the piece? What drew you to doing this quartet?
I think, it was one of us who had seen played one of the movements out of context, and was kind of saying, this is interesting. But I mean, it's definitely a piece that doesn't feel like a piece of the sister of someone.
No, not at all.
I mean, it stands very much on its own terms. I rather than feeling like a traditional quartet, it feels quite sort of character piece-like to me. The movements are character pieces, although large in scale and large in conception, large in expression, really experimental in the way that the quartet texture is used. So, I mean, these sort of, I think, for example, the last movement is incredibly experimental, the way these contrasting scales form this prisms of lights of sound here and there. And, I mean, I think we know that, she wrote in a letter that she was inspired in the slow movement by late quartets of Beethoven. So I think she really, she had a large conception, and she was thinking with great breadth.
And she had a kind of instant talent as well. It's like a little bit magic, isn't it? All the ideas are kind of
well thought out.
Yeah, well thought out, but also kind of spontaneously brilliant. It's a little bit like Felix Mendelssohn as well, isn't it? Like I feel that there's something, just like extra, a touch of genius.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much heart in it, actually. It sometimes reminds me of the Opus 12, Opus 13, in the way that it's just so full expression. You feel like her heart is waiting to explode with the music. There's no introduction to feeling. It's just raw, actually, and it's very visceral to play, which means it's incredibly satisfying, but quite draining, also physically, but emotionally, because you can't really not really get into it when you play. Like, you just feel like it kind of grips you.
Yeah.
A lot of people that haven't heard it before, they are kind of giddy afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a kind of, oh my God, I had no idea.
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah.
That was me. I was just like, oh wow. I mean, and it's just funny because yeah, you know, like she was older than him, and of course he was probably more inspired by her than the other way around. Probably, like if you think about the scope of their lives. So it was just interesting to sort of hear like, yeah, like you know it was interesting to hear music from the person that probably had the greatest influence on Felix Mendelssohn. I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Perspective.
We've been playing Mendelssohn's opus, so Felix Mendelssohn's Opus 80 lately a lot, which is a requiem or almost often seen as a reaction to Fanny's death.
Yeah, right.
And that's a kind of fascinating pair of works to play together as well,
Yeah,
because
the
they
death.
comment on each other in a way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'm curious, as a quartet, do you have an interest in exploring other underrepresented literature that's not so often heard?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, we're very much for individuals. So I think we sometimes are drawn to different things, and I think that's what we find interesting. Yeah, I also think it's because so often we have the pleasure of playing Schubert, Mozart, everything, but somehow to keep it fresh and to be alive with the music, you have to keep challenging yourself to play new work. So I know there's a lot kind of in our mind. We have quite a few commissions coming up, very exciting ones.
Okay.
Charlotte Bray and Turnage, and yeah, we just feel very excited that we can go to both extremes, you know, the classics and keep pushing more. Yeah.
Is there so like for each of you, is there a quartet that you have not yet played that you're dying to play?
Cindy will give you a long answer.
Well, I mean, it's a famous work, but because George Crumb just passed
George
away.
Crumb just died, you're
So,
correct, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so
really-
I've wanted for a very long time to do his Black Angels.
Oh, okay.
For example, that's something we've never done anything like it, but yeah. But I mean, yes, I know I could talk for about half an hour and be very.
No, I mean that in a good way.
Yeah.
I think I'm more interested in wanting to commission composers that I like to have a relationship, because I think the string quartet is such an interesting medium, and I think it would be, yeah, that's kind of where my thinking is these days. But I mean, I've had the pleasure of playing Crumb before, and I would love to play it with these guys. I'm only new to the quartet, but I think it would be quite witch-like.
and at the same time, you know, the Schubert that we played today, the G major, like it is such an extreme sort of psychic journey and such an extreme, you know, it's completely standard, but it feels wild to perform it, you know.
Yeah.
I also find when you pair contemporary works with, you know, the works we know like Schubert, I think audiences that are new really hear them as fresh as each other. And I think that's what's particularly good about programming like that, is that everyone comes and hears in a different way. Yeah.
We're definitely not short on repertoire to play. And, you know, whenever we're planning a couple of seasons ahead, it's always, I don't think anyone ever says, oh, I want to play this, and the others say, no. You know, it's like, oh yes, oh yes, oh yeah. But how do we fit it all in?
How do you fit it all
Yeah.
in? That's true. There's so much repertoire out there. Yeah. Well, so yeah, you know, you just brought up the Schubert and about how it's like a psychic journey, and yeah, like you know, one can definitely say that the Schubert's G major, that it epitomizes sort of Schubert's late style, and it, you know, has this monumental majesty. And so, how do you approach such a work? I mean, that was one thing that I really liked about what you said about how when you program a modern work next to a work like Schubert, you hear it new. But I'm curious, how do you sort of, as a quartet, approach such a broad work, or such a grandiose work with such a broad scale that is so dramatic? And like, how do you try to like break that down at the local level so that you come to the performance at the end? I'm just curious, what's your process when you have such a large mammoth work?
It's probably a long process, which we're, you know, somewhere in the foothills of, but I mean, we basically just, like any piece, we just try to get to know it. We try to hear everything that's in it, and I just try to listen and let it work on me. And I think that the relationship has to be incredibly kind of natural. I mean, there's always kind of like with a piece like that, there's always a kind of mix of incredibly intense impressions at the beginning, and also a hell of a lot of confusion and a lot of questions, and which will never be answered, and that kind of it is a grand piece. It contains, it's unusual. I feel like it's unusual, and like it really kind of goes to kind of insane places and back, which is really disorientating.
Yeah.
So I never feel there's a satisfactory sort of answer with the late Schubert stuff. We just have to. I feel like we just have to start.
Yeah.
And
just start the journey.
Just play the first note.
Yeah.
And then carry on.
Yeah.
That's the feeling.
That's the feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
It to think about is too hard to conceive, and words don't come close to understanding it more. So I think we, no matter what we're playing, but particularly with something like the Schubert, it's about actually kind of playing it so slowly that your nervous system and your deep listening gets to be the biggest thing, and then actually you feel it in a totally different way every time you perform it, but in a good way. I think we save ourselves for in the moment a lot, so that we've done so much listening before that it feels organic. And by playing slowly, we really listen to each other and use less words, actually, and only discuss what still maybe we're feeling differently, but try not to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, when you have something of that scope, it's you can't control it. It's not possible to control what the piece does to you either. And so you have to kind of live it as much as you can, in yourself, in rehearsal, in every possible way, and then let it happen. And because it is a masterwork, it'll live that, and it needs to be lived. So I mean, it
kind of happens to you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Whether you're able for it or not is another thing.
Okay.
Like, it happens.
Yeah.
You said something interesting. You said playing slowly. So, like, do you mean like there are certain sections of the piece, like when you're practicing it as a quartet, that you just practice under tempo? Is that
The whole thing.
The whole thing.
So you practice the whole thing under tempo?
We do that in any repertoire. It's actually our main practice technique. And I don't remember a rehearsal where we've sat down and immediately played. Usually we pick a movement or something, we play through it slowly, and it's just a way of finding each other's sounds. Technically, you feel the intonation and things, but it's also just, it's like looking at the music from a bit of a distance and feeling the resonance. And that kind of resonance of the slow practice, if you do it enough, it's there on the stage with you.
Yeah.
And you can use it, and it's malleable.
Yeah.
It's also very helpful for not building in habits, especially at the start when you're a bit intimidated. You can, I think, build in quite a lot of gesture or opinions or physical reactions to the music that actually, it's like you start always from a very calm place, so you're more objective, and you can hear it differently, and you should hear it differently, because every day you hopefully are uncovering another layer.
Yeah, and that's uncovering layers. That's a great expression, because it's when you do it slowly, it's basically you are able to perceive more that's in there. So as you go faster, that understanding remains, that ability to process remains, and then you can mold the music.
A bit like returning to your favorite book, but not skim reading it, being like, I love this chapter. You know what I mean? A little
No, I
bit
don't.
like that.
No,
like,
yeah.
love it.
No, yeah, like you kind of really, like it's like kind of like, if you were to write something in stone and you really have to like make sure it's lined up,
Yeah.
sort of like this, and it's like it really does give you time to sort of hear the intonation, and that was one of the things that was so thrilling, especially in this hall because it's such a good hall for the string sound. It was just great to hear how the overtones between your instruments blended, and just it was just really just a fine performance. And I feel a little bit selfish that only me and like the crew at MMG got to enjoy it. It was really such a pleasure, and I hope that we're able to have you with an audience again here. It was really such a pleasure.
That would
Good
be
luck on the tour and be safe. And
Thank you.
stay well.
Thanks for having us. Thanks so
Pleasure.
much.
so
Thank you.
Thanks for having